First we have Victoria Tennant, who's from Millsburg, Ohio. Then we have Joanne Eckert from Boise, Idaho. Then we have Lindsay Bramson from Prosser, Washington. And finally, Susanna Jenzinski from Marcy.
Hello, everyone. How many of you know of August Wilson? Awesome. How many of you know of August Wilson's life? Did you realize, oh, good. Did you realize that he was born in the same town that we're in right now, Pittsburgh? August Wilson is one of the most influential writers in American theater. He even co-founded Black Horizon Theater in the Hill District of Pittsburgh with his friend Robert Lee Penny, who is also a playwright. But how did this man, August Wilson, make such an impact across America? What separates or connects August Wilson to the people who read or view his plays? Wilson is able to draw his audience in through simple dialogue and casual atmosphere because he has actually experienced them as well. It is almost as though Wilson is letting us into pieces of his heart and his mind by drawing us into the characters of this play, by opening doors and windows into his life and into his past. August Wilson was born as Frederick August Kittle on April 27, 1945, to Frederick August Kittle and Daisy Wilson. His father, Kittle, was a red-haired, white-skinned baker that had come to the United States from Germany. Kittle rarely came to the Bedford Avenue flat where Wilson lived with his mother and 5 siblings. His mother, on the other hand, Daisy Wilson, was a black woman who worked very hard to keep food on the table and a roof over her children's heads. Eventually, she had to marry a man named David Bedford just to keep her family together. Because of Daisy's marriage to David, the family had to move to Hazelwood, a white working-class neighborhood. Wilson learned to read at age 4 and was very eager to learn from the beginning. He attended many schools and spent his freshman year of high school at Pittsburgh Central Catholic High School. Unfortunately, that was the year that Wilson officially experienced racial tension and abuse that would influence him throughout his life. Although Wilson was light-skinned because of his white father, he was just enough different to become the center of jabs and very crude statements. His time in school was lonely, to say the least. He was the only black student in a student body of 1,500 students, and he was constantly being reminded of it. He always ate alone in the cafeteria, and he often found notes on his desk that read, and I quote, "Go home, nigger." Although Wilson was 5'7" tall and weighed 175 pounds, he had the size that it took to be on a football team, but he was not allowed to participate because he was black. These judgments based on his skin and his culture was the cause of many after-school fights. Wilson recalls in a book written by Peter Wolf that the principal of the school had to escort him to a cab and personally send him home in the cab to save him from 40 violent students that were waiting to seriously harm him after class was dismissed. Wilson left that school and tried to fit into a few others, but his formal education ended at only the young age of 15 when his history teacher at Gladstone High accused him of plagiarizing a 20-some-page term paper. Wilson left that school as well and never returned to another, but instead taught himself at the Carnegie Library in the Negro section. Wilson seemed to have no direction in his life at this point, so he joined the U.S. Army for 3 years, but he was discharged after only 1 year. His return to Pittsburgh ensued multiple jobs, such as short-order cook, a gardener, a porter, and even a dishwasher. Still struggling to find his place in the world, he realized that he had an interest in language and realized that language was so important to how people transmit their culture, their values, and their beliefs. It was the death of his father, Kittle, in 1965 that finally pushed Wilson to make a decision that would shape his life forever. He moved into an apartment. He changed his name officially to August Wilson after his mother because he did not feel that he owed his father anything because he had not been involved in his life. Wilson admitted that he was drawn to theater. He bought a typewriter for only $20, and he began to write. Wilson discovered some influences that would shape his writing style and how it would develop. His first influence was the poet Dylan Thomas. His other influence, that was actually outside of the norm, was the blues singer Bessie Smith and her song, "Nobody in Town Can Bake a Sweet Jelly Roll Like Mine," and the African-American artist Romare Bearden. It was through these and more that Wilson realized that the African Americans had their historical and cultural roots in oral expression rather than in the traditional written word. Wilson was eager to keep his people's values and codes alive in his writing style. He wanted to use raw, open, rich lexis like his fellow African Americans. Wilson had this to say after seeing Romare Bearden, the artist that had influenced him, and some of his work. I looked his work up online, and he uses some realistic images along with bright colors, shapes, and nature. This is what Wilson had to say, quote, "When I, August Wilson, saw his work, it was the first time that I had seen black light presented in all of its richness. And I said, I want to do that. I want my plays to be equal of his canvases." It is after these experiences of finding oral tradition and the emergence of the blues that solidified what Wilson is best known for, his 10 works, known as the Pittsburgh Cycle. All but one of these plays takes place in Pittsburgh, in the Hill District, where Wilson grew up. The Pittsburgh Cycle covers a different decade in the 20th century, from 1904 to 1997. These plays account the misfortune and ambition of African Americans during these times. Here's a list of the Pittsburgh Cycle. Gem of the Ocean takes place in 1904. Joe Turner's Come and Gone, 1911. Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, 1927. The Piano Lesson, 1936. Seven Guitars took place in 1948. Fences, 1957 through 1958 and 1963. Two Trains Reading, 1969. Jitney, 1977. King Hedley II, 1985, and Radio Golf, 1997. Wilson was married 3 times throughout his life, to Brenda Burton, Judy Oliver, a social worker, and Constanza Romero, a costume designer, and he had 2 daughters, named Sakina Ansari. She was born in 1970, and Azula Carmen Wilson, who was born in 1997. Despite his broken childhood home, Wilson seemed to have a solid grasp on the importance of family and the value of support. And this shines through in his writing, as we will see with some of his strongest characters of his play. Ma Rainey's Black Bottom won him his first New York Drama Critics Award in 1985, but it was Fences, 2 years later, that opened on Broadway and won him the Pulitzer Prize. Fences also grossed at $11 million in its first year, which was a record for a Broadway non-musical. Wilson was named 1990 Pittsburgher of the Year by Pittsburgh Magazine, and another play from the Pittsburgh Cycle, Piano Lesson, won him another Pulitzer. August Wilson reported that he was diagnosed with liver cancer in June 2005, and he was told that he was given 5 months to live. Wilson died on October 2nd, 2005. Here is a sentence from Wilson's short play, The Janitor, where the main character, Sam, is almost a representation of who Wilson was himself. As Sam is cleaning out a conference hall that was to be used later that evening for more important people, Sam steps up to the podium and gives an impromptu speech to the empty room, saying, "You are just what you have been. Wherever you go, you gotta carry you with you. You ain't gonna all of a sudden be a different person just because you're in a different city." And I believe that that is how Wilson inspired people across America, by speaking from his heart and his life experiences of growing up as an African American here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.